I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com is here as my colleague and co-host, and Isaac Stonefish from Foreign Policy joins. An incident in Norway, Oslo, Norway, which is the home of the Nobel Peace Prize, and always welcoming any previous Nobel Peace Prize winner. The Dalai Lama himself traveling to Oslo, a 3-day trip. And the surprise was that he was not embraced by the Norwegian government, by the prime minister. There were members of the legislature, but not the prime minister. And this is seen as a snub. Isaac, a very good evening to you. Is this something unprecedented for the Norwegian government to turn away a returning peace prize winner?
Thanks, John. This definitely is unprecedented. It's the first time that anyone can remember where the Norwegian Prime Minister and Foreign Minister have publicly come out and said, we are not going to meet with the recipient of the Nobel Prize for any reason, and especially for such galling as a reason as China not wanting them to.
And Isaac, 2010, the Nobel Peace Committee awarded the prize to Liu Xiaobo, who was in jail in China. Does this have anything to do with that? Are the Chinese trying to prevent another peace prize for a Chinese dissident? Or is this just Tibet and dissidents are just two very different things altogether?
It is intimately related. The Chinese government has come out and said that they're very angry with the Norwegians for awarding the Peace Prize to Liu Xiaobo, who they regard as an enemy of the state, and they either choose not to understand or do not understand that the Norwegian government does not control the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, and that those two things are independent.
Well, yes, sort of, because it's politics, and when the prime minister does not embrace the Dalai Lama, that's a ripple right through Europe. That gets every head of state thinking, what has happened here? Norway is a proud, independent country. It's very rich. It's got a sovereign fund because of its oil, and it shows a lot of independence with that Peace Prize. And you could say that the government doesn't influence the Peace Prize, but it certainly brags about it, and it certainly travels on it. So, what does Norway get for this, Isaac? That's the puzzle. I'm going to remind myself again, I must be more cynical. Okay, what's the quid pro quo here?
So the quid pro quo is that Norwegian salmon exports to China used to make up 92% of salmon exports. Now they're only 29%. The Norwegians hope that the salmon amount that they export to China will increase again. It probably will. The problem here is what the Norwegians get from this is, in my opinion, far less than what they have given. And I mean, it's hard to put a price on one's country's morals and one country's value of human rights. And this has just been a very sad and shameful move from Oslo.
Isaac, I normally get very upset about things like this, and you're right, this is just a despicable move on the part of the Norwegian government. But we're starting to see changes in the way other governments around the world view China, especially because of the very provocative and belligerent things it's been doing around its periphery. Do you sort of see this sort of weak-kneed attitude towards Beijing continuing, or do you think that there's going to be a reassessment like we're starting to see in Asia?
I think Beijing does an excellent job of managing its bilateral relations so that countries feel unable to work together against China. I think China's done an excellent job in the South China Sea and in the East China Sea of having territorial disputes be with each country individually, as opposed to allowing Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, other countries that they have territorial disputes with, to work together against it. So I think things like this are going to keep happening. I think the Chinese are doing an excellent job at being very persuasive in things like preventing other countries from meeting the Dalai Lama, and I think we're going to see things like this continue.
Gordon, what does Beijing gain when it has huge headlines like this about the Dalai Lama? One elderly man who's a threat to no one, doesn't get to meet the prime minister, the president of the parliament, the foreign minister in Oslo, Norway. It's a worldwide headline. How does it gain in Tibet?
Well, it really doesn't, because, in Tibet itself, you have people who revere His Holiness.
Right.
And so this doesn't do anything to make the Chinese more endearing to the Tibetans. And essentially, when he passes on, you're going to see the place just erupt in anger and also in violence. I actually don't understand it in a sense. I think that for authoritarian leaders, symbolism is very important because they're insecure, and this is very symbolic. So that's why it's important to China. But it certainly blackens their reputation, as you suggest.
And I turn to you, Isaac. He's a spiritual leader. He's nominally the head of state, I suppose, but there is a prime minister.
There's a prime minister,
yes.
Losang Sangye.
All right, so he's a spiritual leader, and I don't understand how China gains by, in some fashion, disdaining a spiritual leader, Isaac. How do they see it in Beijing?
So I think there's two answers to that. One, this is a policy that they have held for most of the last 20, if not 30 or longer years, and they do view him, or they seem to actually sincerely view him as a splitist, as someone who wants more independence for Tibet, and they feel that by clamping down hard against the Dalai Lama and by not allowing him to have any actual political influence domestically, they're more able to win the ideological war in Tibet. That's one thing. The other thing that they gain by this is the fact that the Norwegian Prime Minister and Foreign Minister decided not to meet with the Dalai Lama, I think will have some, if very small, effect in convincing other people that, hey, maybe the Dalai Lama is not that special. I don't think this is going to happen in Tibet, but I think people will see that the Norwegian government refused to meet with him, and it could plant the seed of an idea into their head that, hey, maybe he's not as awesome of a holy figure as he makes himself out to be.
Gordon, it does introduce the story we've told before with the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches in China and Falun Dafa in China, that the spirituality threatens the Chinese Communist Party, even if you can't find an accounting of how it threatens.
Everything threatens the Communist Party of China in its own view. You put together a group of fishermen, and you will be banned. And in fact, that did happen, John. This is just, the Chinese leaders see a threat everywhere.
I'm trying to focus just on spirituality, because there is in no way can you interpret the the Dalai Lama as a world-class leader. That just isn't what he does. And in no way could you interpret the Archbishop, who's in exile, right? The man who was named Archbishop in China, as a world-class leader. He's a spiritual leader. That's in his retreat. And yet spirituality, which...
Well, because, leaders of the Communist Party have a flock who really don't believe in the tenets of the Communist Party. So, of course, they're jealous of the fervor of the Tibetans.
Isaac Stonefish from Foreign Policy, Gordon Chang of Forbes.com, the Dalai Lama from this planet and afterward. I'm John Batchelor.